Thank you for pressing start on episode 62 of Underplayed, KZUM's indie video game podcast. Today we have 2 secret games followed by a review of our featured game, Dredge. Here on Underplayed, we review indie games of all kinds, the games with small budgets but big hearts, the lesser-known experiences with imaginative ideas. I'm Bo Po, and now joining me is a guy with big dad mode energy, taking you on in River City. He's here to spread joy and transform a toy. It's your berserk boy, DiscoCola. What is going on?
Let me tell you, I woke up yesterday in a panic because I thought it was time for the recording and I wasn't ready, but luckily I was just off by a day, so I went back to sleep to reduce my panic. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. My grotesque mackerel, my sallow sailfish, my malignant pincer, my vortex interloper.
Do you woo your wife with those nicknames?
Only with one of them, and only on her birthday. That's how special you are. Those are references to our featured game, Dredge. And today, joining us is a very special guest, Katerblossom, who will join us for that review near the end of the episode. So we're very excited to have our friend Kate on to help us review this scary warder game.
Yes.
That she picked from our big list of featured games. And speaking of Katerblossom, we wanted to mention this really fun cooperative game we got to play recently. It was part of Steam Next Fest, but we got to play a game called Galaxy Burger.
Yeah, Galaxy Burger is a flashback game for sure because we're building burger. I didn't work in a burger place, but it was like you're filling orders and you have to like know the right orientation of all the different ingredients on the burger and cooking it to specification. So it's a bit of a flashback, but it's really fun, and it's a game that really relies on communication and time management more so than resource management.
Yeah,
because you can just kind of like throw away your stuff that you don't use. But
yeah, and it's pretty forgiving. But we got to play this with Katerblossom and a specific egg, former guest, a specific egg.
Yeah,
who you heard earlier in this season, and these two were playing it by themselves, and then they're like, okay, DiscoCola, Bopo, you've got to play this game. And then it's 4 of us making all these burgers.
Yeah.
Customers come in, they have very specific orders, burgers and sides and drink orders and things. And I found this game to be super fun. I thought it was kind of chaotic, but also organized.
You know, I find myself thriving in most chaotic situations. Certain chaotic situations are a little hard to navigate, but situations like that.
Yeah. Do you feel almost a weird sense of calm?
Yeah.
When you're given a task that's kind of urgent?
Yeah. And like when you can let people down that have like a face, like you can actively see the person you're about to let down. It's like, oh, I got to get this done. I got to figure it out.
Right.
There's stakes.
Yeah. And we have, standard burger recipes. There's actually a menu with standard burgers that people will ask for, and you don't have the recipe immediately on screen. So you have to open up the menu and follow it step by step, and different things can be cooked for different durations. So you have to pay attention to whether something needs to be raw or well done or somewhere in the middle. But since this is called Galaxy Burger, there are weird galaxy themed foods too that we don't recognize on Earth. That was pretty fun too. But what I like about this game is that we see all of our cursors on screen at once.
Yeah.
So we had 4 cursors like rolling around on screen, and sometimes I'd get distracted looking at everybody's cursor like, ooh, what's DiscoCola working on right over there?
Throwing a soda in the fryer. No big deal.
Yeah, you were like putting ketchup in the fryer and stuff. I had so much fun with that. But we got to play that with those 2 from No Small Games, and it was a good time. And I'm going to use that to springboard very quickly into Steam Next Fest June 2024 edition. So Galaxy Burger was one of the many, almost 2,000 games, I think, featured in Next Fest for June. By the time this episode's out, June Next Fest has already been done for a couple months, but here's a time where we can talk about it. It makes sense. So I just wanted to mention some demos that I really loved. I had previously mentioned Grun on our episode where we talked about upcoming games we're looking forward to from earlier this season. I got to play Grun with its demo in Next Fest, and this game, DiscoCola, is special. I think you would love Grun. It is a game where you have to take care of this property, and like clean it up, pick up trash, mow the lawn, clip the lawn.
I love mowing the lawn.
Well, you're doing all these sort of monotonous things, but there is something very weird and mysterious going on under the surface. So it's kind of this monotonous game, but also there's a lot of intrigue and there's spooky, scary stuff that happens. I got jump scared once playing this game. I cannot wait to uncover all the mysteries in Grun. So that is probably my game of the fest for June 2024.
Oh, I remember seeing this trailer.
Yeah, and it's got a really cool art style. Yeah. And then a few others I really liked. I Am Your Beast from Strange Scaffold. This is sort of a hyper-violent first-person game, which isn't going to be for everybody, but this is a game where it's kind of like you're a Jason Bourne kind of character, but you know that you've been sort of brainwashed and your life has been
a lie,
kind of a lie, but you're kind of seeking revenge and you're trying to go through these really high energy levels, dispatching enemies as quickly as you can, chasing high scores, things like that. I just found this game to feel really good. Another one is Judaro. This is from Jack King Spooner, who made Dujana.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned this a while back.
Yeah, and I found out it's not Judaro, it's Judaro.
Okay.
Judaro is a very different game from Dujana. It is a game where it's more open world. I guess Dujana was kind of like that, but it's an action adventure sort of game. It's kind of like a hack and slash game. I found this to feel really good to control. And
good.
It's still kind of got the very experimental art style stuff going on, like the claymation and just experimental animation stuff going on that we saw in Dujana. But here, I think I could get sucked into this a little bit more, and it's a little bit easier to follow. It's definitely got like more Scottish folklore stuff going on.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that. Another follow-up from a game that I've played previously, Grapple Dog's Cosmic Canines. This is a follow-up to Grapple Dog, which I reviewed in Season 2. This game feels amazing. They're introducing more characters, and the moveset is expanded. And I think this game feels like even more fine-tuned than the original Grapple Dog. So it just felt really good to swing around in this game and platform. And then What the Car is another game that I played.
What the Car?
Yeah. What the Car is the next game from Triband, who made What the Golf and What the Bat. What the Car is a series of very short levels where you're a car or some kind of a variation of a car. Every level feels completely weird and new and unique. And you're just trying to get to the end of the stage. And it's goofy. It's hilarious. This is a demo that we watched Katerblossom play too, as well, a while back. And while I was streaming this one, Triband, I think like the community manager person from Triband came into my Twitch chat and kept me and the rest of chat company, which was super fun.
Ooh,
and
heckers.
Cool. So shout out to Triband and What the Car. That game is just hilarious. Finally, I played tons of demos. I played dozens of demos, so I can mention more and more and more. I loved so many games from this fest. But I also wanted to give a quick shout out to one that I know is on your radar, Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo.
Yeah.
The demo is available on Steam. I think it's still available after the fest. I could be wrong, but this game, I think, is fulfilling the promise that you suspected it was fulfilling. It just feels really good.
Cool.
Feels like a great throwback.
It looks like
the
Curse Crackers, For Whom the Bell Tolls, but more of like a Zelda.
Yes.
It feels like it's filling that void.
If you like kind of old school Zelda games, but you maybe want like just a slightly more modern sheen, or you just want to see new characters, you want a little bit more action, Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo is going to be a good one, I think. So that's all I wanted to say about Next Fest. Didn't want to take too long on it. And before we move on, if you're listening to Underplayed at this moment, thank you, and we love you. If you haven't already, please consider giving us a follow and a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It should only take a few seconds, and we'd really appreciate it. And if you have a friend who likes indie games, maybe share our podcast with them too. It's time for our secret games.
Secret games. Secret games. I know you're playing without me. Secret games. Well, I'm here to tell you, baby.
Secret games.
I've been playing too.
Secret games.
In this segment, we each review an indie game we've been playing in secret since our last episode. We do not discuss what game we're playing in advance. I have no idea what Disco's been playing.
And I know you're playing without me.
He doesn't know what I've been playing. So now I'm going to learn what your secret game is. You're going to review it. Let's start with you, DiscoCola.
Yeah.
Let the mystery be no more. Reveal that secret game for episode 62 of Underplayed.
Okay. My secret game this episode comes from one of our favorites, Amanita Design. And
Wait,
that
what?
is...
Not Samarost.
No.
I'm blanking on the names of their other games. Give it to me, baby.
The name of that game is Happy Game.
Happy Game. Oh, I actually don't recognize that name.
Oh, boy.
Happy Game?
Yeah, Happy Game. You're in for a treat.
Okay.
So I sent you a trailer, and we'll move on from there.
Okay, I'm looking at this trailer, and just in the first few seconds, it's looking a little wholesome, but also a little disturbing.
Oh, well, it's one of those things. Happy Game is a point-and-click adventure, shocker, where you take control of a nameless young boy who finds himself in a series of nightmares, and you must point and click to make him happy again. And here's where I will say there are content warnings abound for Happy Game. The game does so itself right away at the beginning. And I'll also give a content warning about my general thoughts on the game as well. So I'm going to give you a few very large seconds to either leave or just like skip to Bopo's secret game.
Yes, it's time stamped
Yes.
on the episode.
If
so
you're
you can just-
listening on mobile, I'm going to give you a couple extra seconds to get back in.
Yes, if you're driving, maybe make sure you're all clear to press that pause button. Don't take your
Ooh.
eyes off the road too long.
Right. Maybe just turn off the car stereo if you're playing through Bluetooth.
Yeah, just put on those hazard lights in the middle of the road and just stop and no, don't do that. Don't do that.
Okay. I'm just going to make just a couple more seconds. Okay. Here we go. Point and click nightmare really sums it up, frankly. And apart from that, the game is split into roughly 4 sections. Each of the first 3 sections revolves around chasing down and obtaining objects that will make this boy happy. These objects include a ball, a stuffed rabbit, and our pet dog. And then the 4th section is just sort of like escaping our nightmare and finding happiness. It's pretty short. And my review for this game will be pretty short too. And that is because, and to editing mode, Bopo, I'm sorry in advance for this, but Happy Game is absolutely
Wow.
this is just the most messed up game I've ever played.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that
Wow.
it's so much so that it deserves, I think, Underplayed's first bleeped word.
I will bleep
ever.
it. I will bleep that.
That
wow.
is so
I'm,
messed up.
I'm glad that we're saving that for like a special moment. This is a special moment.
I didn't ask for permission first.
No,
so
I appreciate it. And it's kind of reminding me of Neverending Nightmares.
That's
I was
the
going to bring
game
this
I
up.
thought of. Yeah.
I was going to bring this up way later, but I would say Neverending Nightmares is my most messed up game I've ever, maybe not ever I'd have to think about that, but ever played for this show. And I think this Happy Game is now
It
kind of
looks
like an equal there.
Similar vibe for sure from what I've witnessed. Okay. But anyways, just because this game is messed up, that doesn't necessarily like disrupt the likes or dislikes list in a way you might think. But that is most definitely the takeaway here. This game is totally messed up. But here is what I specifically liked about Happy Game. Despite the content of what I'm looking at, the art style is executed really well, and it sufficiently matches the vibe. And again, that vibe being creepy, unsettling, and disturbing. And usually I'm very much into this kind of art direction. It's just a lot. It's just a lot in this one. I do like the difficulty of Happy Game, Amanita does a pretty good job of like being an accessible puzzle producer for most players. A lot of puzzle fans find Amanita games too easy, which I understand. But I think the difficulty here is really good. I think the puzzles are really intuitive. And, you know, that's especially impressive given that everything is nightmarish and weird and doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. But I remember one puzzle in particular where the boy is surrounded by 8 or 9 toys, and you have to point and click each one to activate the next one. And I thought that puzzle was actually really fun. So some really cool puzzles going on. I like that each nightmare has a pretty unique identity for the most part. When we're in the section chasing down the ball, we're solving puzzles revolving around toys. When we're in the section where we want our stuffed rabbit, we're solving puzzles with like cute bunnies and hearts.
We love thematic puzzles.
Yes.
Yes. Cool.
But that's kind of where my likes end. But all the same, on the flip side, I really only have 2 complaints. First, the third nightmare is about like just 3 times too long. You get through the first 2 nightmares in a pretty reasonable amount of time. But then the third nightmare, instead of taking up like a fourth of the total game length, it takes up like half the game. And it doesn't feel paced the best, and it starts to kind of lose track of itself at different points. You sort of forget that you're still in the nightmare where you're looking for the dog.
Okay,
if
yeah.
that makes
and
sense.
by that point, you've played a few chapters already, so you kind of understand a groove, and then it's not that way.
Yeah, and it kind of flips it on its head. It's like, oh, is it going to get more messed up in that I don't actually get the dog at the end? I just lose myself even more.
Yeah.
You know, it's just way too long, and just kind of loses its identity a little bit. And then lastly, the game is it's so difficult to look at. Like, I'm a big fan of like dark, macabre, you know, disturbing art. And there are definitely like stills from this game that are super cool to look at, but to experience it all animated and step after step, beat after beat, it's so hard to get through. I streamed this and like the whole time I was just like, oh my God, come on. Please, it's so much.
Oh no.
It was a lot. It's too much.
Were people watching saying anything about this?
Yeah, I mean that nothing like, you know, they didn't express being really upset. They were just like, oh Jesus, like, oh, this is a pleasant game, you know, that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like the
sarcasm roll. Yeah. Anyways, I wanted to quit so many times, and I don't get rattled easily by most kinds of content, but this was just like, it was so much. It was gratuitous. But yeah, short review. Happy Game is an aggressively upsetting, grim, and disturbing assault on the emotions executed with intention and precision. I've never played anything like it, and I am going to try to keep it that way. I would say not only is Happy Game not for everyone, I would say Happy Game is not for most people. And I think the people that can stomach it will find that the art style, music, and animations all work together perfectly to create this miserable experience. And I don't mean miserable in like, it's a bad game. I don't think it's a bad game.
It's arduous to get through because of how heavy it is.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I think the game is constructed proficiently. But it's just too much, and it makes me so unhappy to say this, but for me, Happy Game is a 4.5.
4.5. That makes sense. I totally understand how this could be appealing to a certain kind of like horror fan, someone who likes that sort of like gratuitous violence. I'm not one of those people. Like I like violence in media, you know, I like a little bit, and I've played things like Neverending Nightmares, but I didn't love Neverending Nightmares because it was arduous to get through, and I had to be in a certain mood to play that game. And even when I was in that mood, I couldn't play for long stretches.
Right. That's exactly the vibe here.
I totally get that. You said the puzzle difficulty was like mostly appropriate. Were there ever times where you got stuck, or was it pretty smooth sailing when you were in the mood?
I had to look one thing up, I think. And then once I did, I was like, oh, I didn't even know I could click on that part of the puzzle, kind of a thing.
Sure. So it's not even something that like you easily missed or whatever.
Right. Yeah. There were a couple of puzzles where I was like, I I don't really understand how to get the puzzle part moving. And just after screwing around for a little bit, I eventually figured it out. But
That kind of sounds like what I remember from Machinarium. Just like I kind of get what to do, but how do I get it going?
how do I electrocute the cat?
Yes, like
that
I
kind
know
of
I have
thing.
to electrocute the cat. How electrocute cat? Also, I love that this game is showing us that Amanita is capable of a lot of different feeling games.
Yeah.
We've played. You've played Machinarium for this show, and you've played it several times in your life. I played Pilgrims several seasons ago. And now this, I don't think we've...
Creeks. I
Oh yeah,
played
Creeks. You
for
played Creeks. I forgot about Creeks, yes. And Creeks is also kind of like dark and spooky, but not this
It's
demented.
just like, it's just like dark and serious. This is
Yeah.
like...
And Pilgrims was very like goofy and
Yeah.
funny and like tongue in cheek. So I love that we're like also slowly making our way through Amanita Design's, like oeuvre
Yeah.
of games too.
Only got
So-
a few left.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll ever get to the Samarost games. We'll see. But there's another one called Chuchel
Right.
that has caught my eye before. There's also
You've mentioned it before.
There's also Botanicula.
Yeah.
The Samarost games.
I think that's it.
There's another one that's upcoming that we've talked about. Was like nominated for one of those awards for art design.
Was it not
Upcoming
Chuchel?
games.
Oh, no, Chuchel's already out.
Chuchel's Phenopolis.
Oh,
Phenopolis.
okay.
Oh dear, this Wikipedia says Phenopolis will release in 2026. How is that possible? Jeez, that game's been in development for a while. That could be accurate or not. I'm not sure, but cool. Okay, so where all can you play Happy Game?
It is available on Windows, iOS, macOS, Android, and I played it on the Nintendo Switch with the Pilgrims Plus Happy Game physical release from Super Rare Games.
I love that.
I kind of love it. If I ever wanted my kids to play Pilgrims, they would immediately have access to Happy Game, and I do not want that.
That is weird because they're on the same
They're on the
cartridge.
same cart, and there's no way to like...
That is weird.
Yeah, so that's too bad.
That's got to be like.
It makes
is that
me-
an oversight? That's weird.
I don't think physical companies are like, oh, kids will play the games with the
Right.
dads
And they're
spending
like,
too
let's
much money.
let's drive down costs. Let's just put them all in one.
Yeah.
Totally get that, but that's also something to be cautious about if
Yeah,
you want
so-
the physical.
I feel like I have to like hide this one,
I
Yeah.
hear you on that. If only it could be Machinarium and Pilgrims.
Dude.
That would be awesome.
Machinarium. They already released Machinarium.
Oh, okay.
But
There you go.
anyways,
Well, it's time for My Secret Game, and My Secret Game will balance yours out pretty well because it is not a very violent, nightmarish experience. It is a cozy one, and it is called Garden Galaxy.
hey, I've heard of Garden Galaxy.
Yes, you have. I just sent you the trailer. So, Garden Galaxy is a 2022 sandbox building idler game. It was developed by Annika Tran and Rob Lauro. It was published by Annika Tran. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, discover, collect, and organize to create your own unique garden in this relaxing idle/creative sandbox, end quote. So in Garden Galaxy, this is a game where you place items on a grid-based map. You have an isometric perspective. And when you first start this game, I think you hit like start game, and you're immediately looking at a 5x5 floor of white tiles, just sort of sitting there in an open space, nothing else around them. And floating in the middle of those tiles is what looks like a honey pot with a leaf sticking out of it. And these small creatures called visitors start showing up. They're like little black cone creatures with leaves on top of their heads. And when you click on them, they give you one of many different looking coins, and you can drag a coin into that pot, and the pot will spit out a random item from that coin's respective set. And if you get an item you don't want, you can drop that into the pot for partial credit toward a fresh coin. And so each set of items has a theme. To name some, there is one that has all farm items. There's an urban themed set. We have beach items, we have swamp items, harvest-themed items. There are many more sets. And all told, there are several hundred items in Garden Galaxy. And this game is all about creating scenes and environments however you want with the items you get. Every item can be rotated. Many items can be combined. You can stack ground pieces to make elevated areas, and you can actually make elevated areas that are quite tall. It's not just like 1 or 2 or 3 levels. It can go quite high. So these environments can become really dynamic. You can stack many different kinds of things together. So this is where I think of unpacking. Remember in unpacking how you could take like a spiral notebook and put a DVD case on top of that, and then like a CD and, you know, like a little knick-knack, and you could make a stack of completely different things. You can do that in this game. You can take a log and put a, you know, like a jack-o'-lantern on top of the log, and then a garden gnome on top of that, and then like a plate on top of that. So it's really sort of up to you as far as how you want to combine these things. And sometimes when you put 2 items together, you'll get an effect that maybe you didn't expect. Like you can take a candle and put it in a pool of water and the candle will float. Or you can put a candle in like a well that has water in it, you know? So the game kind of has these unique instances too. And you can also find many kinds of plants and pots. And I think this is where we get the garden part of this game title. I think the game is subtly suggesting that you look at making a garden type space, but you really can make whatever kind of place you want with these tiles and items. There are tons of items that have special effects too. Some items animate. So there are fountains, there are like campfires, and items like that can be turned on and off by clicking on them. Some items spawn a creature. There's a carrot that makes a rabbit appear. There's this like swamp stick that makes a dragonfly appear around it. So you can introduce wildlife too. Certain objects change the entire environment of your galaxy. So a snow globe will turn snow on and off. There's a lighthouse that toggles the appearance of fog. A sundial that makes it night or daytime. Those are just a few examples. There are also special items that change the behavior of the spawning and the appearance of items. So you can place an object onto a certain stone slab, and that item being on that stone slab means it will appear more often. There's another surface where placing an item there will make it not appear anymore if you don't want to see a certain kind of item.
Like summoning and then also repelling.
Yes.
Oh, so spooky.
And that's really useful for collection. So if you're trying to collect everything in a set and you've already collected a bunch of things from that set, you can start putting those things on the thing that makes it not spawn anymore to increase your chances of getting the thing you don't have. You also have things like pots that will shrink or make items bigger. There's a rare one-time use bag that will multiply any item you drop into it. So if you want a lot of a certain kind of like tile or item, you can drop it into this sack and then out will come bursting all these copies. And one of those probably shows up every like half hour that you play this game. And there's no goal other than waiting for visitors to show up and trading in their coins for random items and decorating with those items. So this game is completely speechless and it's largely wordless. It just kind of feels like this carefree sandbox. And I played this game because we've seen Katerblossom play it on Twitch, and also because she actually gifted me this game last Christmas. We did like a little exchange. And so I wanted to play this for this episode. So shout out to Katerblossom for gifting me Garden Galaxy and, encouraging me to try something a little new for the show. Spoiler alert for my thoughts, but I really, really liked this game. I had a lot of fun with Garden Galaxy, and I'm going to start with my likes as always. But to start off this first like, I have to start with a dislike that turns into a like. So you have to hang in with me a little bit. When you first begin Garden Galaxy, you get a visitor every few seconds. You're clicking on all these visitors, getting all these coins, and trading those in for items means that your screen can get really cluttered before you realize the flow of how you get items. So in the first few hours of this game, I had very few tiles to place items onto and a lot of items that were like stacked on top of each other. And it looked like a mess. It looked like I was hoarding. And the more you hoard, the less coherent your ideas of what to do become. You know, like I had ideas of maybe what to do, but because there's so much on my screen, I felt like it was a long uphill road to get to that point. And it took me a few hours before I felt comfortable in the space I was in. So like, I was not ready to show you my garden galaxy in the first like few hours. I wouldn't be ready to show anybody. But after that initial phase, I feel like the game taught me a really cool lesson that I didn't expect. And that lesson is that I don't need to hold on to everything, because you don't necessarily get every item in this game once. So I started doing the, Marie Kondo. I was doing the Marie Kondo thing where I was like, does this item spark joy? If it didn't, I sold it. And I started to feel this weight lift. And I know it sounds ridiculous for this game that's just relaxing and very cozy with no objectives, but I really don't think I got this game until I started letting go of things. And so I'm letting go of the things that I don't immediately love.
A little bit of a Bonfire Peaks action going on here. Just gotta let go.
I just gotta let go. And so I'm generally not someone who holds on to a lot of stuff anyway, but in games where collection is somewhat of a goal.
Different story.
And I want everything. It is a different story. Yeah. I want everything.
You're in your like Animal Crossing.
I am. In Animal Crossing, my storage is unhinged. Like I've maxed out my storage capacity, and I've used like a lot of those storage spaces, and I've got tons of stacks of things, right? And here I felt this freeing feeling when I grew less attached to every single item. And I say all that as just a general observation that this game did something I didn't expect, and it's probably going to be one of my noteworthy surprises of the season, that the game could make me feel that way at first and then change my feeling about how to look at items. Mm-hmm. In general, this is a therapeutic and relaxing time. There was one night where I wanted to start this game. It was my first session, and I thought, I'll get a good 30 minutes in, just get a good like starter going, and then I'll keep playing, the next few nights. And instead of 30 minutes, I played for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm staying up until 1 a.m.
Sounds about right.
And I'm, staying up that late into like degen hours, looking at a screen usually doesn't relax my brain enough to go to sleep soundly that night. But Garden Galaxy is different. Even though I played it until 1 a.m., it was relaxing me and putting me into that feeling of, ooh, I feel like calm. Mm-hmm. And then I went to sleep so soundly that night. So that's how this game made me feel. It feels great to move and rotate and to place items. Things will snap into place where I want them. I also like that this can be a very active game where you're just like, all of your attention is on it and you're moving things, decorating, redeeming coins for items, or you can treat it as an idle game. You can have it open on one screen while you do other things and then go back to it, and you have now 20 visitors and you have to click on all of them. And now you get this like nice dopamine hit of like, oh, all these coins I have now, I can trade them all in. And I did that while I was writing some of these notes for this episode too. Like, cool. So I had this game open and I had played the game for like 8 hours up to that point. And I had all these visitors waiting for me when I was done writing in my document. So that was fun. And then also, I think this game pulls off one of the most amazing soundtrack feats I've ever heard. And that's that this game has just one song that plays on repeat for its soundtrack.
Oh, no.
It's the kind of thing where you'd think, oh, you would get super tired of that. But I never tired of this song. It's just a very gentle, like, boom, 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 boom. And I don't know why I never got tired of it, but this game does that so well. It doesn't need to have this super huge soundtrack. I would love more songs, but that was a surprise as well. And then on to my dislikes. Again, going back to my first note, this game can just be overwhelming at first before you realize you need to prioritize some of the ground tiles to place things. You can get a lot of the coins from some of the early sets a lot, and later sets can feel quite rare for what they are. There are ways to exchange coins for other kinds of coins, but you have to wait for the right piggy bank to arrive for that to happen. So sometimes it just feels like you're getting a large amount of some items and not enough of others. I completed early sets way before some of the later ones. Also, starting a new concept for an area can require a lot of setup because first you need the appropriate ground tiles. and it can feel like a grind to get enough ground pieces to get up and running. So like, for example, I've got my autumn spooky Halloween area. So I needed a lot of gray tiles for that, and it took me a while to get enough before I could place like all of my pumpkins and my, I don't know, just fall themed things. And even though it's not the spirit of the game, I would take more goal-oriented tasks in this game just to keep me coming back. I have to be driven by the desire to just hang out, relax, and decorate. And I do like doing that. I loved doing that in Animal Crossing. I did that for hundreds of hours. But when I'm not in the mood for that, you know, obviously this isn't going to be the game I want to play. I can't just like play it in any mood.
Right.
So that desire and that feeling will be different person to person. But overall, Garden Galaxy is a really simple concept that has many ideas rolled into one. It's part relaxing idle builder. It's part collectathon. It's part meditation tool. But perhaps most importantly for me, it's a game that taught me to let go of what I don't need at the moment, to embrace being a little picky, and to remember that something I sell will eventually come back again. I had a great time decorating and creating something that I feel is unique to me. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10.
All right.
It's playable on PC.
Cool. Well, looking at this, I recently was talking with my wife, and I think we were watching Egg, a specific Egg stream, Urban Jungle. And my wife, you know, caught a glimpse of it. She's like, "Oh, that looks kind of fun. I'd love to decorate in that." And I'm like, "Yeah, and if you know, place certain items next to each other, they benefit each other in different ways." She's like, "Oh, well, I kind of just want to decorate." But I wonder if this is maybe a better fit.
Maybe, yeah. You do have to have patience, and you kind of have to be willing to sort of change your mind on what you want to do on the fly sometimes, because you might get a few, let's say, campsite themed items. You might get a tent, and you might get a little pillow, and you might get like a campfire. And you might think, ooh, I can make a whole area out of this, but it might be a while before you get the rest of those campsite themed things. And so maybe you put those items off to the side, or maybe you're just comfortable with it being a really small scene. And then with the idea of, oh, I'll just build on this later when I happen to get more things. So it's up to you as far as like whether you want to stockpile things or just kind of build it as you go and see what happens.
Yeah. It's at least another option to throw out there. So
yeah,
looks super cool.
I would suggest this to her, and it's, you know, it's very approachable. Also, I just wanted to show you 3 of the main areas of my Garden Galaxy.
Okay.
So you can kind of see what I was able to build after about, I'd say like 8.5 hours total. First, I'll show you sort of the clutter that was going on in the first few hours. That's kind of what was going on there. And then eventually this was sort of my main area, just kind of like a garden, garden themed area with lots of elevation.
Yeah.
Not too chaotically cluttered, hopefully, but lots of sort of the basic items there. But then I expanded into sort of a Halloween spooky part.
Okay, yeah.
There. And that's a work in progress. And then finally, this is like the beginning of a work in progress, but this is sort of a swamp area.
Okay. Well. And I'm starting to get the idea, like you mentioned tile pieces, and I wasn't totally like grasping the importance of that, but I'm starting to get it now.
Yeah, everything. That's another thing I love is everything fits on one square. There's nothing that's like, oh, this is a 2x1 or this is a 4x4 item. Everything is one tile in size.
Okay.
And so nothing is like really to scale, you know, ratio wise in that way. But I like that you can kind of plan easily with that in mind.
Now, once you place tile items, are you able to move them later? Like, are you able to move items at will?
Yeah.
As you get them?
Yes, you can. You can move items. You can move a whole stack of things at once. You could have 10 tiles stacked high and you can just move all of them at once. You can rotate anything. Nothing's ever locked in place. You can also select a large batch of items and move them all at once using the control button on your keyboard. You can like drag a box too. So that's nice.
Cool. Well, I hope someday it comes to console. If I really do want to get my wife to play it, that will probably have to happen. But yeah, it looks super cool.
Yeah, cool. So those are our secret games, Happy Game and Garden Galaxy. Let's move on to our review of Dredge. It is our featured game. Dredge is a 2023 fishing exploration, mildly horror game with RPG elements, developed by Black Salt Games and published by Team 17. The game synopsis from the Steam storefront reads, quote, Dredge is a single-player fishing adventure with a sinister undercurrent. Sell your catch, upgrade your boat, and dredge the depths for long-buried secrets. Explore a mysterious archipelago and discover why some things are best left forgotten. End quote. Joining us for our review is one half of the NSG crew. She knows all about Maine and the Katerblossom game. She'll serve a tamale that'll make you feel jolly. It's the emote spammin', PB and jammin', totally awesome Katerblossom. What's going on?
Oh my goodness. That was so good. Like, I don't even know what to say. That like exceeded all of my expectations. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm really happy to be here.
Yes, we're so happy for you to be here.
Stoked to have you. I remembered that last night that, I get to hear a new rhyme tomorrow. And then I forgot today. And so I was also surprised. I was like, yes.
We try to make...
It was stellar.
We want to get us all started on the right foot. But Katerblossom, since you're a new voice on the podcast, we haven't had you as a guest before. Can you go ahead and start by telling us about yourself and the content you create?
Yeah. So hi everyone. Nice to meet you. I actually already know Bopo and DiscoCola, but hello. Thank you for having me here. My name is Kate, or Katerblossom, or Kater, or Katie. I started streaming Animal Crossing on Twitch in 2021, and that kind of opened the door to video games for me. Most of my content is the indie game podcast I co-host with a specific egg called No Small Games. And I actually found Underplayed when I was doing podcast research, because I thought, I want to do an indie game podcast, but what does that even mean? What do some of them look like? And once I heard y'all, I couldn't stop and I had to keep coming back. And it's kind of wild that I'm here now on your show. So life is amazing. Everything comes full circle. And yeah, I'm a Twitch streamer, mostly do variety games, indie games, and I love horror games, and I love fishing mechanics within games, and I love scary water. But yeah, mostly my content is the podcast, indie game podcast, No Small Games, and Twitch streams when I have time for them.
Relatable. Cool. Well, Kate, why don't you tell us just your gaming journey? Like you mentioned starting to stream with Animal Crossing, but let's pull the lens back a little bit. How far back does it go in reality?
Well, I always thought that video games were for boys. So when I was growing up, I only got to play them at my boy cousin's house. We had three boy cousins that are the same age as me and my two little sisters. So we would go over to their house and we would play stuff like Super Smash Bros. And Pokemon Snap. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I wish I could have something like that. And then we got their hand-me-down PS2, where the only game that we had was ATV Off-Road Fury 2. So my little sisters and I used to we used to go to Blockbuster and rent like a rom-com or a movie. We watched that movie and then get snacks. And afterwards, we would always kind of end the night with some ATV Off-Road Fury 2, like girls do, you know?
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the earliest memories I have when it comes to gaming. But then I got really interested in Pokemon cards, and I started to collect Pokemon cards as well as Yu-Gi-Oh cards and kind of play those with the neighbor friends. And then when I realized there were video games attached to Pokemon, I did get my own Game Boy and I started playing Pokemon games on that. But I kind of put that aside for the larger, young adult part of my life, and didn't pick games back up until the pandemic started in 2020, as I all of a sudden had a bunch of free time because I was working in the theater industry and the restaurant industry, both of which totally shut down. So I was like, what am I going to do? I'm going to play Animal Crossing and Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. And then I decided to maybe start turning this into like some content. So I started with an Animal Crossing Instagram where I would exclusively open amiibo packs and kind of mail them to people.
Whoa.
It was kind of it was kind of interesting. I started as like Blossom Crossin' was my
Oh.
Animal Crossing Instagram.
I love that.
And I would just put videos of me like opening, not even my face, just like of my hands opening a pack of amiibo cards. And then my thing was like, let's mail them to each other because that's how we can stay connected during the pandemic and we can stay connected through Animal Crossing. Eventually I started to meet a lot of people on Twitch, a specific egg being one of them. And as my streaming journey kind of started to evolve, I started to discover indie games and I really connected with them because to me, they feel a lot like theater and plays, which is what my background is in. So to discover all the different artistic elements within an indie game was very eye-opening for me and really kind of emotional. And then I kind of just got obsessed and started trying to play as many as I could get my hands on. So that's all of it. That's the history.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even though you've only been playing games for several years, you have played lots of games. Like you have tried all kinds of indie games. And I feel like you've done a lot of catch up on sort of
Yeah.
like time that you would have otherwise spent gaming in your past. You've caught up on a lot of like classic games and contemporary indie games, which is
Yeah.
really cool.
And, we both guested on an episode of No Small Games, and within that episode, you were the only one of the four of us that had played all four of the featured games.
Yeah.
So that speaks to like just how much you've really accomplished in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I think I'm not so great at finishing games, but I have played a lot of them and I like to kind of try things out. And I feel like I sort of miss that time in my life, even though I'm grateful to be in a better place and have a job and all of that stuff. I do miss the free time of being able to really explore and like dive into games really deeply. But I guess that's what the podcast is for. That's what No Small Games is for, is giving me that opportunity as well. So yeah, love indie games. And honestly, as I go throughout my life and the podcast, I'm not really even sure what kind of games I like. I'm just learning so much. And I thought I just liked stuff like Animal Crossing. And now there's a lot more out there that I'm discovering. So I think this is a great game that fits in with that, as well as my discovery of games that I like.
One of the most fascinating parts of No Small Games is hearing how your tastes change over time. I always hear you and Emily talk about like, oh, I never expected to be into this as much as I was. And that's really cool because I think that highlights how everybody's taste can kind of change.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I noticed that with y'all as well. So like, I feel like there's a really nice, and it's a pleasure to be friends as well. So it's fun to kind of hear that journey with y'all as well, because I've been listening, I guess, for a year and a half or however long, like maybe 3 months before No Small Games started.
Mhm.
I don't know what time means, but it feels like I've been listening to you for a while.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you finding us. And, I feel like that led to this moment, which is really cool.
Absolutely.
And now I think what we'll do is set up Dredge. So I'll talk a little bit about the setting and story, then I'll throw it to Disco for the gameplay stuff. So Dredge is a game where you control a boat in an archipelago. And on that boat is our main character, who is a fisherman hired to be the new angler of a coastal town called Greater Marrow. And you can talk to other people like fishmongers and artisans and townsfolk who comment on the region around you, and they give you tasks to complete. And it's not long before you notice some strange occurrences. You see shipwrecks, you see some people behaving unlike themselves, and at night, especially as you sail around and don't sleep, as you get into those degen hours, which none of us here would understand anything about, like degen
not
hours?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, absolutely not. You start to experience strange phenomena. You see ghost ships. You see these like phantom wispy things. You see fish monsters. You see what I like to call surprise rocks.
Oh yeah, Phantom Rocks.
Phantom Rocks. Yeah, I like Phantom Rocks. That's a band name right there.
Oh yeah.
And on the nearby Blackstone Isle, you meet the collector who wants you to track down 5 relics that are spread across the 5 areas of the archipelago. And those areas are the Marrows, which is where you start. And then we go on to the Gale Cliffs, Stellar Basin, Twisted Strand, and Devil's Spine. And as you sail around to all these places, you do a heck of a lot of fishing, as well as unravel a mystery about what's going on. You find a series of notes and bottles left behind from long ago. That's sort of giving some backstory. And this is largely a fishing game, so I think I'll leave the setting and story setup at that, and then I'll throw it to Disco to talk about the gameplay.
This is probably one of the hardest gameplay setups I've had to do because there's a lot. There's a lot you do in Dredge. At its absolute most forefront, like Bopo said, you are a fisherman, and you can locate different fishing spots. These are indicated by disturbed water. They're pretty visually distinct, so you can pretty much always tell when you can find a fishing spot. And then you go there and you go fishing. As such, you also drive your boat. That's part of the gameplay. But there's a ton more than that. Similar to fishing, eventually you unlock the ability to dredge the seafloor. And the minigame to dredge is very similar to the fishing minigame. So it kind of feels like it's the same thing, but you're picking up different kinds of items. You can get resources like wood, scrap metal, cloth, or even like small little trinkets and treasures that you can sell. Some of them are a little bit more important, a little bit more special than just being sold. So keeping your eye out for dredge spots is important. You can use the items you dredge as materials to upgrade your boat's hull, which will allow for more storage space, so you can go on fewer trips back and forth to the fish market or to your storage, because you can just store more stuff in your boat. Depending on progress, you will also gain access to spells, and these will join some more basic, just standard boat things like a light and a foghorn on this like cyclical wheel that you can pick from. And some of these spells will include things like boosted speed, teleportation to a certain point on the map, warding off dangerous elements, making you invisible to them. Something called atrophy, which I never actually used myself, so I don't totally know what that one does, but just a couple of different spells you get based off of progress. You're also going to encounter a good number of NPCs that will ask you for specific tasks. Some will ask you to dredge up certain materials. Others will ask you to catch certain fish, but perhaps the most prominent character is the character that asks you to find the relics. So that is probably the most important NPC in the game and probably the driving force for ending the game.
Yeah, that's the main story, kind of.
Yeah.
Even though there's not a lot of details, like that's the main task.
Yeah. At the start of the game, you kind of don't really know, like, what is my main thing? Like, you find this guy and there feels like gravitas because he marks points on your map. It's like, okay, well, that feels important. But even still, you're like, I've got a lot of stuff I haven't explored yet. Who knows what the game actually is? Anyways.
Yeah, I feel like you're like fishing for the story as well. Like you gotta go look for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You also manage your whole storage space as well as your land storage the best you possibly can, managing upgrade materials and equipment in order to please as many of the needs as you need to meet. There's also something called apparitions, which are deformed or mutated versions of more traditional fish. And these are recorded in a Pokedex-style book that will allow you to sort of keep track of what you have and haven't caught, as well as where you can find them and all the different kinds of fish. And then gameplay-wise, the coolest thing, I think, about Dredge is sort of like some of the psychological elements. Bopa mentioned, depending on how you sleep or don't, you may encounter some really wild things. So the later you are out at night, out to sea, or the longer you haven't slept, you will see some weird stuff that can damage your boat, which will eventually cost you money to fix. So trying to avoid a lot of those things is important and part of the gameplay as well. And that's all I could think of, which is a lot. There's
a lot to this game when it comes to gameplay. A lot of systems that overlap and happen simultaneously, and you kind of get into a groove sometimes of going out and fishing and then going back, selling things, repairing things, all the while picking up new tasks to go complete. And it's a mysterious game, like you've both said. Like, we're unraveling something going on. There's something greater at play. What is that? And so we're sparing a lot of those details, but we'll probably talk about our feelings on those details as well. Just wanted to talk about some quick historical facts too. This was nominated for a couple game awards, including Best Indie Game and Best Debut Indie. There were several nominations and honorable mentions for this game at the GDC Awards. Dredge won Best Indie Game at the IGN Awards. It was nominated for Best Indie Game at the Golden Joystick and Dice Awards. There was a DLC released in November 2023 called The Pale Reach. There's an upcoming DLC called The Iron Rig that will be out around the time this episode releases, actually. So at
nice.
time of recording, we've recently learned about The Iron Rig. It's not out yet right now as we sit down, but it will be out when this episode is out.
Hooray for timely episode releases.
Yeah.
Very timely.
So none of us, just as a forewarning, none of us have been able to play The Iron Rig. And then the crossover content happened with Dave the Diver in December 2023 as well. This was kind of wild. Another popular indie game that collaborated with this game, and they had cool crossover content. There's also a live action film adaptation for Dredge
Ooh.
being developed by production company The Story Kitchen. So that's fascinating as well. Kate, can you tell us a little bit about your thought process of like looking through our list of featured game ideas and why you picked Dredge?
Yeah, so and I'll also just say I'm definitely going to watch the movie because I almost feel like it would be a better movie, but I don't know. We'll see. Y'all sent me your list of potential featured games, and there were quite a lot that caught my eye. It was really hard to even narrow it down to a couple. But I wanted to pick Dredge because, first of all, I love horror, and it's kind of, billed as a horror game in the marketing, at least I think. They talk about how it's a horror game. I love water, I love the ocean, and I love sea creatures, and I always have. When I was really little, my dad kind of instilled this curiosity in me about like sea creatures because before he met my mom and had me, he was actually a dolphin trainer. And he has a degree in biology, and he's very curious about these sorts of things. I have very distinct memories of like going fishing with him all the time when I was a kid. I actually don't like to eat fish now because of that, because I ate so much fish when I was a kid. But just really special memories with him fishing. And also, he always had really fascinating fish for pets. There's actually a fish in Dredge that my dad has had as a pet before, the garfish, the one with like the really
Oh,
long.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's
So,
some gar around here in creeks.
Oh, really?
If you're in the right creek.
Oh, cool. I'd love to explore that someday. And I enjoy fishing as a hobby. But my dad always brought home these really weird looking fish for me to have as pets all the time. It was like a fun hobby for him to just like get me a new fish and see my reaction. So really curious about that. And as I've, gotten older, and I live in Maine now, and I'm totally cool with saying that on the podcast. A lot of people know that about me because it's a big part of my identity. I've called Maine my home for about a total of 9 years now, and I think that the vibes of Dredge really remind me of Down East Maine or Mid-Coast Maine, a coastal Maine town. It was actually really, when I started the game, I played it for the first time on stream, and I just kept being like, this is just so Maine coded. Like, this is how I feel when I go visit coastal Maine towns, and even the people down to like, well, not the mayor. The mayor's a little much, but like, like the
Yeah.
fishmonger. I'm like, oh, I totally know a guy that is like that sort of. And I know a lot of people who are lobstermen, lobster women, and they go out and they do these really dangerous jobs. So I was just curious to see if this game was going to touch on that at all, given my fascination with my home, the state of Maine, and also just my curiosity about, horror and fish and scary water. So
Yeah.
that's a lot, but I was just really interested in checking it out.
Yeah, it was a good pick for you for a couple reasons. I knew that you liked scary water media. We've talked about
Yeah.
like horror movies like Crawl, I knew you were
Love
into that.
Crawl.
Yeah, you love Crawl.
I
So I
love
knew that-
gators too. Love gators.
Yes. And so it was a great fit there, but also just the geographic setting, the appearance definitely has those vibes. That's so cool. That's such a cool combination. And now, Katerblossom, could you go ahead and just walk us through your thoughts on Dredge?
Okay. So some things I really liked about Dredge were the overall art and visual design. I thought it was really stellar. I think they nailed the vibes of being out on the ocean in a beautiful landscape really well. I really liked watching the sun set and rise. And, when you're playing, you just see the moon appear in the middle of the sky. And when you combine that with like the piano string music, the music felt really maritime to me. I think that can make for like a really powerful, memorable gameplay experience, just in terms of the vibes being thick, if you will. And especially if there's like a whale or dolphin nearby. And kind of on that note, the creatures that actually exist in real life, they look so incredibly realistic and detailed to me as someone who's like into that stuff. And like even the strange different appearances that fish can have. I really enjoyed collecting and discovering the fish. That was probably one of my favorite parts of the game. And I appreciated how much the fish suit their particular environments in which you find them so well, like finding the catfish in the Twisted Strand, which is a more swampy area, or the Aurora jellyfish in the Stellar Basin, which is a tropical area with palm trees and the like. I appreciated the thought that went into that. I really like the supernatural and scary elements. I thought that they were very surprising and exciting at first. I liked having a bit of fear set in with the early gameplay and kind of not knowing what was going to happen to me on the open water or what I might run into. I just wasn't expecting there to be deaths in the game. That was very surprising to me. My boat caught on fire and then I slammed into a wall and then a fish came to get me and I was like, oh, I thought I was just going to be fishing. Okay. The stakes are a little bit higher than I had previously thought. But most notably, the sound effects were my favorites. Not the music, just like the actual sound effects that we were hearing, like hearing something behind me or in front of me and just trying to figure out what that was. I love the sound of dredging the items up. At first it was jarring, but then it became satisfying to me. And like the sound of reeling in a fish, crashing of waves on the shore. Even when you pull up a mutated variant of a fish, there's like a little sound cue that you get along with the visual that says, this is something different. And the sounds of just night and monsters in the deep and the little baby piranhas in the devil's spine were just sounded so cute. So all really cool. And one other thing I really liked was how all the NPCs and characters fit the vibe of the place so well. The theme of loss and moving on comes up a lot in Dredge, for me at least. I noticed within the quests and when you're helping people to sort of make amends and sort of, process grief and stuff. I thought that was a cool part. But yeah, overall, I was surprised, which is good, but I think eventually it got a little repetitive for me. And I will also say that the game has a passive mode, which I did explore, which is just when you're playing, the monsters won't come get you. And so you can kind of move through your tasks a little bit more quickly because you're not having to like start over or like spend money to fix your boat and stuff like that. So I'm happy that mode exists for other players. I think that's a really cool inclusion. Although I didn't like that experience for me, I'm happy that it's an option because you can turn it on and off whenever. And the inventory management Tetris bit was really satisfying. And I like that when you go look in your boat, you can actually physically see what's there. Because in a lot of inventory management games, you'll go into like a separate menu and you'll see like a little picture of what you have and how many, but I liked the strong visuals there. So a lot to like about it. For dislikes, there were some things that I wasn't really thrilled with in the end. Because there's no time limit, I felt like after a while there were no stakes. After the initial surprise kind of wears off and the monsters of the deep can kind of just become like another annoying thing to deal with for me. Like I was like, okay, I already know what happens here. Like this boat is just going to chase me and kill me unless I do manifest or whatever. So I just felt that got a little bit old for me pretty quickly. And I don't know. Yeah, the time I kept thinking there were going to be more risks and more things that could happen if you stayed up all night, or more, I guess, just more threats to your boat and to yourself. I don't know why I'm asking for that, but I just felt like I needed more. And let's see, it was hard for me to pay attention to the story after a while because I did play over 30 hours of this game and I started it many months ago on stream. And I had such a good time streaming it, and I probably will keep streaming it, honestly, but because the community really has a blast seeing how many times I could, fall into the water, hit my boat up against a phantom rock, and how many times I could catch my boat on fire because it could be a little chaotic. But
I know that pain from streaming a short hike and having a tough time with the boating challenge. I was getting laughed at in my chat, so I totally feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and just as a new gamer too, like so many things will happen, and I'm like, oh, I had no idea that this could even be an option.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that was fun, but I just think because I started so long ago and I lost a lot of parts about the story, I had to go back and kind of research, okay, how does this all unfold? Because again, I'm not the kind of person who does great when I have to look super hard for a story and go fishing for the story. I'm just focused on the fish. Like I'm just focused on getting a big garfish, and I'm gonna forget about the story. So for me, that was a miss, but I can see how for other people they would really love to explore the story in that way. And all of the upgrading that needs to be done is a little bit tedious, and I think it's hard to stay motivated to continue upgrading. At least it was for me. And I also have some thoughts about the end, which I won't talk about. But yeah, I think the story overall was a little bit hard to follow for me and disappointing. And I didn't end up feeling as captivated with it as I had when I began playing it. But all of that to say, it's a really fun, different experience. It was a great game. I really enjoyed it. And is it time? Am I going to rate it? I'm nervous.
Rate
You're ready for it,
rate
man.
I'm excited.
Okay. I think overall I'm going to give Dredge a 7.5 out of 10. We rate on a scale of 10 here, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, great. It's been a while since I've listened to you. Y'all are about to launch your new season, so I haven't heard a new episode
Oh
in a
yeah,
while.
that's
Yeah.
true. Like we're like 10 days away from. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, so 7.5 because I do like it, but it just didn't give me that feeling that a lot of indie games that I've played give me, where I'm just like, I can't put it down. I can't stop thinking about it. That's usually the indicator to me that I've played something that's really special to me. And I just didn't really have that with Dredge. But that being said, I think it's a great game. And I know that a lot of people who are quote unquote cozy content creators, which I don't, personally identify as, but I know a lot of people put me in that boat.
Ha.
Haha. I just kind of feel like this is a nice offering because it's got that sinister vibe to it as well sometimes. So at the end of the day, if I just want to chill, I could maybe play Dredge instead of Stardew or something. So I like that we have a different offering here. So yeah, overall, I did like it though.
Cool. Awesome. And yeah, I did see a few seconds of you streaming it here and there, but I tried to stay away because when you started, I hadn't started Dredge yet. But I'm glad you were able to show it to people and that people were having fun watching you.
It was so fun to stream. I had a blast, and thank you to anyone that is listening that kept me company in my chat as I explored all of the dangers of Dredge. It definitely gave it a bit of a comedic relief for me
Yeah.
versus when I was playing on my own.
Yeah. Shout out to Katerblossom's community there on Twitch. DiscoCola, how about you? What are your thoughts on Dredge?
It's my turn. Okay. Real quick, before I go into it, I want to shout out a specific egg because you were gifted Garden Galaxy. I was gifted Dredge by a specific egg.
Amazing.
And I think maybe she understands that I like really practical gifts. And I think she knew at this point that I was going to have to play Dredge. So I was like, DiscoCola, I'm going to give you Dredge.
That is so
So,
nice. I love that.
So shout out to the other half of No Small Games for getting this game in my library. Anyways, yeah, Dredge. As far as things that I like, now I'm the opposite of Kate here, where I usually dislike fishing mechanics in games. I usually dread fishing, but here I actually really love it. I think the fishing
Wow.
is really fun in this game. I like that different fish have different like mini game styles to catch them. And I really, whenever I was like on my way to somewhere specific to perform an NPC task, and there was this fishing spot where I'm like, I don't think I've caught a fish here before. I really wanted to go there. And that whenever you fish, time passes like
I
in the
know.
in-day clock. So you're like, you're
It's a
risking
risk reward.
it.
And
I was
yeah,
like,
you're getting distracted a lot in this
yeah,
game. And I sort of saw parallels to Spiritfarer in that
oh
way.
yeah, dude.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
You're on your way somewhere and then something catches your eye and it's like, well, I'm not doing that thing I was just doing for a few seconds. And then you're doing like 5 more things sometimes if you're
Yep.
me.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I actually really loved fishing a lot in this game. And a lot of that also has to do with the aberrations, which are really cool. I think all of those aberration designs are awesome. That's sort of the like dark, macabre kind of looking stuff that I wanted, that I love, as opposed to Happy Game where it was just like, oh my God, can you please just like rest for a minute kind of a thing. Just like super cool concepts. Like there's one that has like a black hole looking thing inside its head, and it's so cool.
Yeah, there's one that's a reference to Alien. It has like a alien
Yeah.
chest
Mhm.
burster thing coming
Yeah,
out of
dude.
its mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I love the aberrations. It creates like a Pokemon element to something that would otherwise just be like real world fish. And that wasn't something I really would have been interested in. So really love the aberrations here. I like a lot of the side quests just because it's usually stuff that I'm already finding just by the very nature of being curious about fishing spots and dredge spots. So I'm already finding a lot of these things, and I'm getting sometimes too much of these things for myself. And so when I find someone who's interested in these items, I'm like, perfect, have it, take it, get it out of my boat, please.
I need more space.
Please, I just want to catch a gar real quick. That being said, there were a couple that were like, if I wasn't being forward thinking and I didn't mark where they were on the map, and maybe their task was finding a specific fish that's not always easy to find, if I'm not marking them on the map, I'm just ending up with rot in my boat while I'm looking for where they live. So I liked most of the side quests. Some of them were like ones I really wanted to do. I just was not being proficient about it. I liked the stakes of the really big monsters in this game. And whereas like a lot of the game, I felt like the stakes were pretty low for the most part, these monsters were like really intense, and it made me change the way I was playing because I was playing very cautiously, like pretty much the whole time with everything. But then there's these monsters, and it's like, I have to be here, but this monster is between me and that point, and there's like nothing I can do. So I'm like driving really fast and being a little bit reckless sometimes. So I really liked the stakes of these huge monsters. I like that the game has laid out a pretty linear path for you, but you don't have to follow that. One of the first places I went to was Devil's Spine. I ultimately didn't accomplish anything important there, but you can go anywhere on the map you want at any time for the most part. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and Devil's Spine will be a place that many people will go to last.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's designed to kind of be the last, like, hardest place. And like, you can go there. Like, you can go.
You can just go
You're
there.
not blocked. You can just sail there.
There's
it's
a
all open ocean.
Couple of little paths you can't take until you unlock something else, but you can just go
I
there.
also went there first.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
I actually really like upgrading the boat. I found like putting the little pieces of wood and scrap metal in just that little slot Tetris thing, and just like, you know, clicking the buy button and then getting bigger space in my boat. I found a lot of joy in that. It's like finding all the armor pieces in Mega Man for me. That's sort of the same like dopamine hit I'm getting there. And because of all of those kinds of things, Dredge has a lot of that like just one more thing, just one more task, you know, sort of vibe for me. It's like, all right, I dropped off, you know, this fish to the weird cloaked dude, but then he's like, now bring me another one. And I'm like,
do it again after that.
I think I will do it again. I think I will do that for you, sir. I know where that
remember
fishing
where
spot
I
is.
saw one of those. Yeah.
So it's always just a one more thing for me. Not always, but most play sessions, it's just like, okay, I'll just go do this real quick and then I'll go to bed. And then I'll do two more things after that. There are things that I dislike. I was really looking forward to the psychological horror element of this game. That's sort of why I paired it with Happy Game instead of like Far Lone Sails in our last episode, which I originally planned to play for this. So I was really looking forward to the psychological horror, but ultimately I found that the stakes of that were not very high. And because of my like cautious play style, I avoided going out at night pretty much all the time. And so I didn't run into it, and I kind of wish that it would have forced me to do that just a couple more times. So that's why I really liked the big monsters, because it's like you can't avoid those. You can't sleep those away. You have to do it.
Yeah, it can kind of feel like the game is counting on you to be irresponsible
Right.
at some point, so that you don't sleep enough, and then I didn't plan my time enough, so now I'm getting haunted by all these things.
Yeah.
And that happened to me a lot in the first like 2 or 3 hours, but then I got into the groove of I need to sleep once it gets to be a certain time of day, I need to make my way back. And then I encounter that stuff a lot less.
Yeah, see, I like very beginning of the game, I was avoiding a lot of that. It wasn't until like, I don't know, maybe a third of the way through the game where you get to that one island that just has the big monster in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I found myself out at night a lot for that one, but I always had the floating dock in my eyesight. So I always had just like this straight beeline no matter where I was going. So I was being cautious the whole time, and I only really ran into like 2 or 3 points where I got in trouble with strange hallucinations or whatever. I think the movement speed definitely at the beginning is a huge drag.
Ooh.
It's so rough to play the beginning of the game because I feel like I can't get anywhere. And it did take me a long time to understand how to like upgrade stuff and do research, which is another complaint of mine. I don't think all the systems are explained very well for the most part. So like when you're docked, you can donate research parts to unlock new items. But because I'm docked, and because being docked is kind of like a safe place, like almost like a pause screen kind of place.
Yeah.
The icon for research is a gear, and I thought that was just
Settings. Yeah.
So I didn't
Same.
I didn't touch it for hours. I had to ask our friend Drake. I was like, "How the hell do you do research?" Because I just had dozens of research parts
I know.
I could have done stuff with so early, and I was just wasting my time.
Honestly, like after playing now for many hours, that's a piece of advice I'd give to somebody is like understand the difference of all those different places you can go to at the dock.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
figure out where you upgrade your boat, where you repair your boat, where you buy crab pots. You know, all those places
Yep.
are different.
Yeah. And even though I loved upgrading the boat at the end of the game, I didn't understand that I could just like put my materials in there even if I didn't have all of them for the upgrade.
It's a nice feature.
Yeah.
It's a super nice feature because I just had so much stuff.
Yeah, but if you don't know about it, what's the point? Yeah.
Right. Like I think I ultimately I threw away like 4 pieces of cloth pretty early in the game because I just didn't have room for them and I didn't know what good they were doing me.
Mhm.
I threw them away, and then I'm getting to like the 4th island and I'm like, I need some cloth, and none of these dredge spots are cloth. So I was in trouble
Yeah.
for a little bit.
They don't explain that part to you at all, which I also struggled with. Like I felt like once I started focusing on finishing the game, that I felt like I was playing a totally different game because that's when I learned how things like that worked because they don't really tell you about it, to my recollection.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, it just if they did, it wasn't like explained well because it's also
Yeah.
it's the same person that fixes your boat, and so I like associate her with like fix my boat, and then I can't separate the two very well. So yeah, I guess lack of direction would also be just like a big overall complaint. We have the guy pointing us toward our relics, but that's sort of the only sense of direction I have, frankly. And then I also didn't follow the story well pretty much at all. I was just returning the relics. There were a couple of small pieces here and there. I got to reunite 2 brothers, which was a nice moment. And I got to move someone to a new island, and that was pretty nice. And there's a little bit of story with this scientist, but those are just bits, and they're not part of the overarching like story.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then I reached the end, and the ending looks cool. That really big,
Eldritch horror.
yeah, just a big moment. But I
Mhm.
don't understand why. Like I don't understand the significance of this person, these relics, and this ending.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of like doing the task, and here's credits.
Yeah,
Same.
you both are saying this, and I'm right there with you both. It feels like the story bits through like the notes left behind are very optional. It feels like they're kind of flavor that's added in, but it turns out they're very important. And I
Mhm.
didn't know that. And so I chose not to pay attention to them, thinking, oh, this is like tons of other games I've played where I find messages in bottles. And it's just like, oh, a fun little piece of lore if I want it.
Yeah,
It's actually like
it's
significant.
the lore.
Yeah.
And I'm getting pieces here and there, but I'm still not like connecting all the dots.
Mhm.
But that's really it. Dredge is a game that frankly, I was dredging. I don't usually like fishing games, but this game added aberrations, and that was enough to like keep me signed on. And the rest of the game was surprisingly good. Nearly all the aspects of the game like culminated in a game that had me on that just one more thing train. The biggest disappointment for me was how optional some of the like psychological horror elements were. I was really looking forward to some of that creepy stuff. There were a few fish that I 100% had to catch at night, but for the most part, I was pretty capable of avoiding all of the sinister stuff, which is like, which is too bad. I never felt like super properly challenged by the game. I felt challenged by understanding all the systems. All the same, I did become invested in collecting fish and completing as many fetch quests as I possibly could. I did have a surprising and unexpected amount of fun. So for me, Dredge is actually an 8.5.
Awesome. I'm so glad you liked it to the degree that you did. I didn't expect you to like it maybe that much.
I didn't either.
Yeah, that's
frankly.
that's awesome. I'll go into my thoughts, and a lot of my thoughts have echoes of what you both have said. But I had a hard time putting this game down, and when I wasn't playing it for stream, I was thinking about it nearly constantly. I had no issues playing this for hours at a time, and a lot of that is to do with how this game feels to control and to play. I think this boat feels amazing. I agree that it's pretty slow at the start, but you can turn on a dime, you can stop really quickly, even if you're using haste and you're going really fast with some upgraded propellers. Like you can stop like before you hit something. I love how that feels. Powers like the haste and the manifest let us move around super efficiently. So I think they nailed the feeling of this boat and just getting around this world. I love the mystery and the intrigue for the first like half of the game, especially when you're not really sure what all the game has waiting for you. And so this is less about the story and like the narrative that we get. It's more about the vibe, which feels like it builds slowly and effectively. There's eeriness everywhere. You feel like anything can happen, especially at nighttime. You know, when you start to see a few of those panic moments where things chase you or scare you or damage your boat. Once you see a handful of those, it's like, well, what else is there? Like anything can happen. There's like magical stuff happening in here. And so there are moments where my skin was crawling, sometimes because of like aberrations or just because of something chasing me. I love a lot of the visual moments. The very large thing you see at the end of the game with one of those endings is an image I'll hold on to for a long time. I also love, gameplay-wise, the dopamine hit of finding a fish for someone or upgrading your boat. There was a session I played, not on stream, where I played for like several hours and all I did was look for cloth and lumber and, scavenge materials just to upgrade my boat because I wanted to feel that satisfaction of getting better. And no one upgrade by itself feels terribly substantial. Like you don't get any upgrade that makes you feel like, oh, that was the one, baby. Now we're going to rock. It's really just they add up over time. And when you compare the end of the game to the beginning, you do such a better job at moving around and storing fish and things like that. So I like that I see that incremental progress. So it's scratching like an RPG itch there. I also really like the inventory management. I saw this as kind of like a quasi mini game. You know, I'm sailing around. I'm nowhere near a dock. I can't sell my fish for a while. And I start to pick up more fish and I'm running out of space. And I love being able to rotate things. I love the subtle effect of the fish like wiggling when you rotate them too. And I have to make decisions. And I think this is where the game is really dynamic with the gameplay because it's asking me to figure out what to toss and what to keep. So it's not just like my inventory is endless and I can pick up as many fish as I want. Just as long as I get back before nighttime, I'm good. I had to toss fish and I'm evaluating like what fish is fresh still, what's rotting, what's about to turn into rot. So I think that is really cool and it changes up what I'm doing all the time. So the boat inventory size can feel a little limiting, but I think that's by design. I think that's because they want you to think about what you're fishing for. They want you to be mindful about how much you fish too. I also love the convenience of being able to swap things to and from storage. Just when I'm in an inventory screen and I'm docked somewhere, I can just hit a button to go to my storage, or I can send things to storage, send stuff from storage to my cargo super efficiently. And then I get to some things I dislike. And one of the first dislikes I had with this game was there was a steep learning curve with all those systems. This is something you talked about. It took me several hours to feel like I understood the whole loop of the experience I was in, because you have to get adjusted to the fishing, the selling, the crab pots, inventory management, how you install gear, the panic system, and just getting your bearings on the world. Like, where am I? What are the cardinal directions? Where am I supposed to go? All that stuff is happening simultaneously. And so it took me several hours to get into the groove. And then there are times where I fiddle with the game. Even after I learn the groove, I fiddle with things. And this is where I'm talking about what are the differences between the fish market and the floating dock and the shipyard and the research menu. Like 4 different places do varying amounts of like selling, upgrading, repairing things. I always go to the wrong one and I'm like, oh, not that one. It wasn't that one. It was this one. So like, I want to buy a crab pot. Is that at the shipyard? No, that's the fish market. I want to upgrade my boat. Is that at the shipyard? No, that's at the floating dock. So all these moments where I've been playing this game for 10 hours. I should know the difference. I don't.
So relatable. That is so relatable.
So yeah, it's just things are so similarly named. Maybe that could be remedied if we could do multiple things at multiple menus, or just trim down the number of menus. The inventory management can feel kind of like a chore when you're dealing with crab pots. This is a very specific scenario, but I was putting down lots of crab pots, and crab pots can catch a lot of stuff. And when you want to sell that stuff, you can feel like you're going to and from the crab pots a ton, and then you have to repair them, and then you have to throw them back into the water. So that felt like some chore work at a certain point. And then I get on to the story where I feel like things are sparse. I think there are interesting tidbits told in this game. I like the side stories. I like the, reuniting the brothers. I like finding that scientist in the old fortress. And, you find a lost dog. You have to find a home for a lost dog. I love those little moments. But then where the big story happens, I don't even know that it's being presented to me. And then at the end, I feel like there are some really big moments that could have hit harder. Maybe if they just invested more time into the end. I think I would take more story in the last like third or fourth.
Yeah. Like maybe you go take that last relic or whatever, and then you have to go to maybe 2 or 3 other places before you reach this point, in the ocean where the game ends.
Yeah. So it feels like it just ends quite suddenly. So I just want more from that.
I was just going to say, I feel like getting the relics was really anticlimactic. Like it was like just checking them off the list. I would have liked to see more right after, like you're saying, right after you obtain one. What do I have to do next,
Yeah. And there were 1 or 2 times where I got a relic and I was like, oh, that was the thing that got me the relic? I'm done already with this whole area, So it's like, oh, that happened kind of suddenly. But yeah, the loop is just go back to the collector, and then he puts another mark on your map on where to go for the next one, which I don't mind. But I think just some more moments that told me a consistent thread throughout would have been nice. And then I didn't turn on I forget what it's called, Kate. You mentioned the passive mode. I didn't turn on passive mode. I didn't know it existed, but I would have used that for Devil's Spine.
I did in fact use that for Devil's Spine because I found that part really challenging. And that mommy anglerfish, or not anglerfish, I don't know what she's called. Sleeping mommy, maybe?
Mommy, yeah.
Band name? I don't know. She because like the little piranhas, they can see you and then they'll slow you down, and that's how Sleeping Mommy finds you because she can't actually see. But that was getting me every time. I was like, okay, passive mode, let's go. They can't get me.
I didn't even know about passive mode. I would have used it for Devil's Spine. So Devil's Spine specifically is a place where I just felt like the difficulty ratcheted up, because it's not that it was impossible, but the area was forcing me to go back to the dock so many, many times. And I just felt like that killed the flow for me. And then there are other minor annoyances I have, other minor likes I have, but overall, I couldn't put Dredge down because it feels so good to play. And exploration, I feel like, is constantly rewarding me. I found its systems a bit overwhelming at first, but this game has vibes, and they are thick, just like you said. And I want to keep playing it. I'm also going to rate it an 8.5, like DiscoCola.
Peckers, all right.
Nice.
Yeah. And so thinking about making progress, we've talked about the collector and getting different miscellaneous tasks. How do you approach making progress in this game? Because it is such an open world. You don't have to go looking for the relics. You can choose to upgrade things, or you can just like beeline it to your next objective. How did you make progress? And then like what optional parts did you explore as you went along?
Personally, I did not try to make progress for probably my first 16 hours of gameplay. I was just having a blast catching all the fish. I ignored a lot of the quests, and I largely was like, oh, yeah, they want me to find relics, but what are those? And when you see the big red relic in the sky to like find out where it is, I was like, I'm not going to go over there. Like, that seems really bad. So it took me actually a long time to realize like that's where the relics are, but I got burned because someone during stream said that I'm too curious for Dredge because I got burned so many times that I got scared off of the big glowing red relic in the water. So I really was just kind of exploring and not really trying to do anything to progress. I was slowly trying to upgrade my boat because I did also find it really slow at the beginning. Like I'm like, I just want to go fast. I want to go vroom vroom on my boat. But yeah, I really was playing a different game. Like once this recording date started to get closer, I was like, I gotta finish. I gotta like actually play the game and get to credits. So that was, and I wonder if I would have a different rating if I sort of just kept taking my time, because it did feel a little rushed to me. But I really was only interested in exploring to find all of the fish and less about the story. So hopefully that answers the question. I think that was the question.
No, yeah, that's totally valid.
Yeah,
how about
I'm
you?
kind of in the same boat. Like, I didn't,
Same boat.
We're both fishing in the same boat.
Once I returned the relic that got me haste, I was like, okay, well, I do want to go find the relics because maybe these spells are as good as haste. None of them were as good as haste, but I did, I found interest in the relics for that reason. And then there was kind of like a puzzle element to it that was a little bit fun. But I did really like the side quests. I wanted to feed the beach creeper all of his gross fish and watch him eat the hearts out,
Beach Creeper's another band name.
Beach creeper, let's go.
But I did want to do all that. I did want to find all the fish. I didn't focus on it because I was like, I don't have time to go catch all the fish and then wait for my randomized chance to get all the aberrations too. I did want to, and I'm really fascinated by that. So that was like something I really wanted to do, but I was trying to like get this out of my task list before I was going to attempt my Mega Man stream, and I just, time was not on my side. But I really liked a lot of the little side quests where I have to go dredge some material and bring it to this person, or go find a specific like stone tablet or something that I need to bring to the curator or whatever his name is. Like, I happen to find most of those and I'm only missing one, and I really want to see what happens. So I did like a lot of those little side quests.
I do like how the game gives you those side quests, but you never feel overwhelmed by how many there are. And so I feel like that encourages me to want to knock those out. Since I'm in like Gale Cliffs, so Gale Cliffs might only have, a handful or less of side quests. And it's like, while I'm in this area, I'll just knock them all out. And that feels really good because you're getting a reward.
Yeah, and
time.
you kind of like get a sense of how much the game's going to throw at you too, because all of your little like tasks are on that bulletin board looking
the
thing.
Pursuit board.
Pursuit board. And you can see how much space is left. So you're like, well, there's only like room for 4 or 5 more pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So good. So
when
good.
you get to when you unlock like the last yellow note, it's like, ooh, I'm getting close to the end.
Yeah, there can't be much left now. I did every pursuit I could before moving on to the next relic. I upgraded my boat as much as possible before moving on as well. Part of that was I didn't want the game to become too challenging or like intimidating, I guess. And
over leveling,
Yeah,
important.
I'm over. And so like by the time I get to the 4th area, like Twisted Strand, I was like I almost had a fully upgraded boat, which was awesome. And then that just makes the last areas easier. And then, the encyclopedia is really visual, really nice for tracking down fish you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
I 100%ed this game, and I was looking at that encyclopedia, and I was like tracking down what are the areas that these fish are found in. And I actually went to the wiki several times to find fishing spots. Like I was getting that specific with things. Yeah. And if you're interested in getting like all the aberrations, that skill atrophy, it drains a fishing spot for like 3 in-game weeks. Yes. But you're guaranteed an aberration of that fish.
Oh.
So
that's cool.
I was sailing around. If I needed like an aberration that was rare, I didn't spend time fishing for it, hoping I'd get an aberration. I used atrophy. So I was like exhausting all of these fishing spots with that. But it doesn't.
You are an ecological disaster.
I know, but it actually does not break the game. It does not break the game. It doesn't make it so that there are no fishing spots simply because there are so many fishing spots.
Right.
And after the 3 in-game weeks, they respawn. So if you're at all cautious about that, like I was, I thought it permanently took them away. It does not.
Okay.
Thankfully.
Yeah, I always like depleted all the fishing or all the stock at every spot that I found if I had room in my boat.
Yeah, same.
Well, speaking of that, that's a good segue into our next little question here. What habits did you develop regarding fishing and selling and being aware of like day and night? So how did that work for you?
I tried to not sleep as much as possible just because I want to see what happens. I'm like, what are they going to do? Are they going to get me? What's the worst that can happen?
That's how I live.
Let's get scary and weird. Let's get weird.
Guys, let's get
Dredge.
weird.
Let's
This
get
is
weird
so
and Dredge.
weird.
Yeah.
So I tried to be in degen hours at all times. And in passive mode, also doing that is exciting because you'll just be more observant of things as well. Or you can just like notice more things because there's not monsters coming to get you. And I think I read somewhere that the devs were saying, if you feel like the game is too hard, sleep less. And if you feel like the game is too easy, sleep more. Is that the right way?
Other way.
Maybe it's the other way. So what I just said, but the other way.
Yeah, I get it.
You get it. So yeah, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna stay up, see what happens. So my habit was not sleeping, which made it, I think, fun for me anyway. And I feel like a habit that I got into was just constantly going to the what are they called? The areas where you can go, the portable, where you go like upgrade everything, where you do everything on each island. I don't know what they're called.
Where you upgrade not the dry dock.
The docks.
Yeah, the docks.
Yeah. Or like, I think they all had different names. Like one was like Rusty Pontoon.
Do you mean like where the traveling merchant shows up?
Yeah.
Yeah,
what are those called? Are they all different?
I know the one in the Gale Cliffs is called like the Rusty Pontoon or something like that.
Okay.
But
So-
they might all have different names. Yeah.
I think they do have different names, but whenever I saw one of those, I just always went to it, even if I didn't need to, and just like sold my fish and tried to see if I could upgrade something. That was like ended up being a good habit that I got into, I think. But yeah, other than that, it was just how much can I not sleep? Because there are certain things that can happen too if you don't sleep, and they're like those little rocky areas, or you can come upon a stone, and if you come upon that stone when you are having insanity, like something happens. So anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. And there are levels to the panic and the insanity. Like when that eyeball meter starts like really looking around all crazy and it's pulsing, I think that's when you're the craziest or whatever. You're in the most degen.
You're gonna go bananas.
You're
Yeah.
going bananas and you're seeing crazy stuff. And
You're on like the 10th game of Mega Man. You're on like Mega Man number.
And that's where I would sometimes see things that maybe I only ever saw once. Like I saw
Interesting.
like some creatures that I feel like I was like 10 plus hours in this game and I'd see something and I'd be like, that's in this game? I thought I saw everything. So you can be surprised, I think. But for my habits, I was doing the sleep deprivation for usually no more than 24 hours because I kind of figured out you can like get away with not sleeping for a night and mostly be undisturbed. It's after that first night where like I would get bothered by things chasing me a lot, and my ship would get damaged, and I don't want to spend the time repairing my ship. So that was mostly out of a desire to figure out how much can I get away with to make the most use of my time. So I figured out I can stay up for an entire night. It's the next night that I need to sleep, or the next day I need to sleep. So I was doing that, not sleeping every night necessarily.
That translates to real life, by the way. I promise.
And then another thing I did that was kind of a habit every area I went to is I dropped like 3 or 4 crab pots next to like the Maine, that place you were talking about, Kate, like the main place where the traveling merchant shows up, just because that was passive income kind of.
Smart.
It did take time though to shuffle all those fish into my cargo and then sell them off. And I had to do lots of different trips. So I'm docking and undocking a lot. It's kind of a lot of work, but that's a great way to fund upgrades.
It's honest work. It's an honest, honest job.
Yeah, it's an 8 to 5 job for you in the game. It does pass a lot of time when you do that, but yeah, I'm doing that, and it helps to defray the cost of a lot of the upgrades, which is nice. How about you, Disco?
Yeah, pretty much a combination of the two of you. I would sell stuff whenever I drove past the dock. Whenever I possibly could, putting materials into the upgrade slots instead of into my storage whenever I could. But then instead of staying up as much as I could, I did sleep, even when I was like,
yeah, you were careful.
The sun's starting to set. Maybe I'll just go to bed.
I love how we have the whole spectrum of caution here. Like, you're the most careful. I'm somewhere in the middle, and Kate's just like, show me whatever game.
And it might be like the opposite of how we live our real lives.
Yeah.
That's probably true.
I was up until 5, and I'm not kidding.
Wow.
But
you're doing great.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're doing really well. Going back to like the vibe and the story, what did we notice about how this game felt with its vibe and its story? And like what shifts, what evolutions did you notice? Because this is a pretty long game. Things can kind of evolve over time. I feel like it's not always the same tone. Any noteworthy moments?
For me, it's so dependent on how I'm playing the game, honestly, because if I'm on stream, it's feeling totally different than when I played most of it actually in the past couple weeks on my Steam Deck with headphones plugged in. And I found that to just be like the way that I preferred playing, because I was really able to lean into the vibes. And I think because I had started the game so long ago, I think that it does really progress in this really cool way of just getting more and more, I guess sinister is not the right word. More and more thick, scary vibes as we go throughout, and discovering like new scary things that can happen. So I did really enjoy that, because I think when I started, I was just so eager to see like, okay, come at me, like what's gonna happen. But they made me wait for it a little bit, and I think that was cool of them.
Yeah, for me, as the further out from the Marrows I got, I started to notice like more environmental storytelling, like there's a shipwreck here in this like pathway with rocks that are blocking, certain directions. That makes a lot of sense. There's this like really sinister tunnel over there in Devil's Spine, and I want to know what that's about, but I got to go finish this thing first. And I just like, I want to know. I do. And so there's just like things. And
but I gotta go to bed.
I gotta go to bed.
Setting.
Yeah, and and like the airplanes and the Tangled Tower Swamp.
Oh, yes,
I like
Tangled, not the Tangle Tower Swamp.
Tangle Tower Swamp with the catfish,
yeah,
the starfish.
Yes.
And just like seeing all those airplanes, but also seeing these like man-made traps.
Yeah.
Inside this swamp, and I'm just like, that's cool.
There's the mind control things coming out of the swamp. That was wild. Too.
It's just a cool thing. So, how about you?
I love that like each area has its own thing. Like each area feels like it has its own ideas and quirks, and that's going back to a lot of instances you both have mentioned. But I also love how we do kind of get a slow build of things, while at the same time, we get a super early example of something that's uber scary in my mind, because we get asked to go to that place called Steel Point. It's in the Marrows. It's more in the north, and it's kind of like involved with one of the first side quests, I think. And that's where I saw my first ghost ship. And I see this other ship at night sailing around. It looks just like me. and I have my
Yeah.
horn and I'm honking my horn at it. I'm like, "Hey friend, I want to meet you." And then
Help
I
me.
get help me, and I go toward it and it turns toward me and it starts like beelining toward me. And I'm like, "That's interesting." And then it's like this giant fish that wants to
The
destroy my
anglerfish.
Yes, it's the anglerfish. It's actually a scary fish with a boat for its head or whatever. And so that opened my mind to like, oh, this game is pretty scary.
I like how they did that, like mimic, like having monsters or creatures appear as other things. Because they did that with like the crab at the Twisted Tangled Tower strand as well. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the things are not as they seem.
Yeah. And then we also have a fall after a lot of moments of tension. So there's like peaks and troughs with how it's throwing all those suspenseful moments at us. It's not like
Mhm.
constantly suspenseful. It's not constantly peaceful. I appreciate that as well.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, speaking of the boat mimic fish, what other like hallucinations and monsters were like super memorable or your favorite? Like I have one for sure, but I'll let you guys go first.
Yeah.
Well,
Kate.
that was mine. I mean, the anglerfish boat. Like, I actually think I laughed after that happened because I was like, "That's so like I did not. They got me. They got me. I did not see that coming."
You got.
And like you can foghorn at it and it will do it back, right? If I remember.
I think so. I did a foghorn at one point and I heard like an echo, but I don't know if it was
Yeah.
my foghorn echoing or if it was a call and response.
See, I never foghorned at it, but it would foghorn at me. And it was pretty often close to the traveling merchant dock.
Okay.
And so for a while I thought it was her foghorning me, but it's our
It's our new
Interesting.
friend.
our fake friend.
Our
Fake friend. Yeah, that was my favorite probably. I don't think I have another one that super stood out, but
I want to give a shouty outie to Stellar Basin. This is my favorite area.
I was going to ask you guys that question. I was going to ask what your favorite area was.
This ties into like my favorite area and also just like a memorable monster moment. Stellar Basin is that tropical place with the giant monster in the middle. It's like a giant kraken thing.
Something, yeah.
That will attack your boat. And I actually never had it attack my boat. I never like got attacked by it because I knew something was down there. So I was really cautious. But you go to a research outpost and you power some kind of a generator that sends out a pulse that wards it off for a while. And I love this because it's not permanent. And so it maintains this tension where I can now fish in the area where my boat would have been attacked, but I don't know how long that thing is going to ward off the kraken. And so I'm still feeling the stress. And I love that it was that balance. And I also like this area because this is where we find the lost dog. And I liked giving
that.
I love that. I loved giving the lost dog. I think you can give it to maybe a few people. I'm not sure, but I gave it to the researcher in the fortress, which is I think where a lot of people will take the dog.
Yeah.
I kept it because I'm selfish. I still have the dog.
Oh, you still have it? Like, do you have it
Yeah,
in
I
your...
wanted a companion.
That's
I
awesome.
wanted-
Do you keep it
yeah.
on your boat?
Sometimes, and then sometimes I
Aw.
put it in the storage and it becomes annoying to like not have enough room.
Yeah. I also, like, quick side note, I think it's kind of humorous that when you need to bring people places, they show up in your cargo.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
like
my gosh, so funny.
Like, that's wild. But yeah, what about you?
Same for me. Like the first time I went to Stellar Basin, I was just driving across the middle because I was like, oh, is that? I mean, my last relic was pretty easy, so I just went straight to the relic. And then I'm getting tossed, honey. Like I am getting messed up. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And so that thing is also my favorite monster. It caught me
Cool.
way off guard and it
Nice.
just looks cool. And I'm just like, it's changing the way I play because you can't,
Mm.
you be cautious about that by just not going over there. That's
Yeah.
how you are cautious about it.
Exactly. Yeah, you go around, you can go like way around that thing. We always love moments that make us play differently. That's
Yeah.
a huge example of that. I want to mention now the Pale Reach DLC. I actually
Yeah.
got to play this, and I don't
Nice.
have a ton to say about it, but it definitely feels different than the base game in that it is this kind of small area. It's kind of like roughly the same size as some of the areas we go to in the base game. But this is like an icy environment. We have all kinds of new species a fish. There's a narwhal that like attacks you. It's very
Ooh, I
sinister.
love narwhals.
Yeah. And so you get like the legend of this narwhal. But there's also a legend of like a bigger creature, like an Eldritch horror, like a huge thing. And you get this kind of side story about these explorers who got trapped in ice. So I'll leave it at that. But you learn more about these people who were exploring. And this place feels like it has a lot of locks and keys. And what I mean by that is like you can only access a little bit of it and you do a quest and that gives you something that gives you access to a slightly larger area. And then you do another quest or two and then you can expand from there. You unlock the ability to break ice with the hull of your ship.
Oh,
so you can like
cool.
you can eventually run into ice blocks and break them to unlock paths that you couldn't access before. So I liked that. It just felt like it almost felt like a Metroidvania in that way. Like I'm finding abilities and powers that give me more access to things.
Botroidvania.
But
nah.
it is like that though. It feels... It feels really nice, I think. But it kind of ended up feeling like a scavenger hunt with a lot of the tasks it offered. I spent a few hours in this and then I was done. It's not like a huge substantial thing, but I think it's worth playing if you like Dredge.
I think you talked me into it with the narwhal and the explorer,
Yeah,
so I'm super down.
I think you'd dig it. I think you'd dig it. Like the new species alone are pretty cool. And then I'm looking forward to the Iron Rig as well that comes out this year.
I really want to complete my fish Pokedex, and I think it's a great game to stream. So I'm definitely interested in checking out the additional content, and I plan to. And I also wanted to just say that I think that fishing games and fishing mechanics, oftentimes feel kind of similar. And so I'm happy to hear that Disco in particular liked the fishing game because I think that the way that they structured the fishing mechanic was really interesting, especially getting to see the outline and shadow of the fish. And you're like, oh, what could that possibly look like? What kind of fish could that be? And that with the dredging and fishing was really cool. So I'm happy to hear that y'all liked it. That's exciting.
That shadow is kind of like it's giving... Who's that Pokemon?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Love that.
You also can kind of get a sense of size too. It's like, this one's pretty big. Maybe I need to come back until I have more space kind of
this is
thing.
gonna
I
be like a
didn't
big
fish
shark.
up a Clefairy. Are you kidding me?
Kate,
Sure.
before we conclude, can you tell us a little bit about how to find your content for anybody curious?
Yes, you can go to nosmallgames.com and read about my indie game podcast that I host with a specific egg. And you could also find me on formerly Twitter and on Instagram under just Katerblossom and also Twitch. Katerblossom pretty much everywhere. So no longer Blossom Crossin', but we're Katerblossom and we're cool and I'm happy about it. So come hang out and we can talk about indie games. And I'm so happy that y'all had me on and this was a blast and a half. And thank you so much.
Yes, it means so much that you're able to play Dredge and join us today. Thank you so much. It's so fun. That's our review of Dredge. You can play it on PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. Katerblossom rated it a 7.5. DiscoCola rated it an 8.5. I rated it an 8.5. That's the end of this episode of Underplayed. You can find more of our episodes at kzum.org/underplayed and on common podcast platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Our music was composed by Jack Rodenberg. Our art comes from Onimochi. Underplayed is on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at UnderplayedPod. You can find me in those places at BoPo, that's BO_PO.
And I am at DiscoCola in all of those places to various degrees. And you can check out our Twitch channel, Underplayed Podcast, where we may or may not be talking to a special other guest in the future. Not to reveal too much. But we will be playing co-op games on Underplayed and premiering episodes early every Monday night before their release. So you can come chat with us when we drop new episodes.
Next time, we will have 2 more secret games to review, and our featured game will be Axiom Verge 2, a Metroidvania developed by Thomas Happ Games. Until then, everyone, keep on playing.